Hello and welcome to Devil's Advocate. How does the government view the situation in Jammu and Kashmir? And has the time come to take special measures to tackle terrorism? Those are two issues I shall explore today with the Home Minister of India, Shivraj Patil. Home Minister, let's start with the situation in Jammu and Kashmir. In your assessment, how grave is the situation?
Situation is something which should be handled very carefully and handled in a manner which does not hurt the feelings of any section of the society over there.
So this is a challenge?
Handled in a manner which would help to overcome the difficulties which may arise out of misunderstanding.
Do you share the fear that the present crisis in Jammu and Kashmir could reignite either the militancy or the secessionist tendencies which were beginning to come down this year?
Militancy and terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir had come down in last 4 years' time by 70%. It's a big achievement. And I would give credit to the people of Jammu and Kashmir and the government of Jammu and Kashmir. But these kinds of activities may encourage some people to continue or to increase the terrorist or militantry.
Mirwais Omar Farooq, but also Mehbooba Mufti have both said that the Kashmiris are considering reviving pre-1947 economic links with parts of Kashmir that are now in Pakistan. And to be honest, many other people on television from the valley have expressed similar sentiments. Does that worry you?
I would not like to comment on the statements given by these leaders without going into the detail. You will please excuse.
But what about truck drivers on the road, ordinary people in shops in Kashmir? They say that if there is an economic blockade and we can't trade with Delhi, then we will revive relations with Pakistan. Does that sentiment worry you?
I don't think that is a sentiment which is entertained by every truck driver or every citizen.
It's a minority.
Why? Because why I'm saying this thing, the road is open. The road is now used by the truck drivers and others. Now from Valley they can go to Jammu, and from Jammu they can go to Punjab, and they can go to other parts of the country.
But Home Minister, even on Thursday, even on Friday morning, there are people on television from Srinagar saying that they can't get their fruit through, they aren't receiving medical supplies. And those ordinary people are saying that if you won't open the roads, we will revive economic links with Pakistan.
No, that will not be necessary, and nobody who understands the geography, history, and the conditions in which all live here would say that. Okay. But road is open, and we will do our best to see that the road is not closed. It is not allowed to be blocked by the agitators.
Did the intelligence agencies warn the government that emotions and passions were building up in such an exceptional way, particularly in Jammu, or were you taken by surprise?
No, we did have some information, but that information was not limited to Jammu. It was the information from Kashmir also.
But did you expect an outcry, an emotional outburst of this nature?
I would say that what has happened there is something which has to be carefully dealt with. But then we were not unaware that something of this nature could be started by somebody.
Twice you've said this situation has to be carefully dealt with.
Yes.
How much of a test is it?
This is psychological, this is economic, this is social, this is political also. All these aspects have to be borne in mind while trying to solve the problem which is faced there.
Without naming names, because I know you don't want to, would you say that the situation in Jammu and Kashmir represents a failure of government at various levels?
We shall have to consider not only government, but consider the political sections of the society also, and the social and the cultural angle also, and the history and the geography.
So the element of failure and responsibility could be very widespread.
If something of this nature happens, each one of us, whether we do something or not, are sorry, and sometimes we feel that if it could have been avoided, it would have been better. If it could have been done, it would have been better.
Now, let me broaden the subject a little. The government is sending an all-party delegation. You desire to speak with the widest cross-section of people. The BJP in particular has asked the Prime Minister, not once but repeatedly, to hold direct talks with the Sangharsh Committee. Are you prepared? Is the Prime Minister prepared to do that?
Well, I would not speak for the Prime Minister. In fact, it was suggested Prime Minister has already spoken to the leaders of different parties, personally, separately, and in the conference also. And the attitude of the Government of India and the Prime Minister has been to facilitate dialogue and discussion at every level. But in this case, we would go step by step. It's not correct that we should jump at the highest level alone and then so. Now, if we could hold a meeting in which all party leaders met and they said that let a delegation go there and meet and talk to them, and afterwards let us consider their suggestions, and afterwards again decide as to what can be done, it can be done.
So later on it is possible the Prime Minister could get involved himself,
well,
but not at this stage.
I wouldn't say that no or yes and all those things. But
you have an open mind. You have an open mind.
I told you that Prime Minister did meet so many people from Kashmir, Hurriyat people, other people. He did go there and meet the people and all those things.
Let me put this to you. There's no doubt that the government is going to hold talks. There's no doubt that you're going, Pranab Mukherjee is going. Does the government have a proposal in mind that could become the framework of a solution? Do you have any ideas?
This is the time when we would like to hear what they have to say. We have our own views, we have our own ideas. So we are not going to say that this is the way in which you should think.
You're going to hear first.
We will hear first, and we will cull out the common points. And then we will try to do the things in such a manner that it gives satisfaction to all concerned.
So in other words, you're going to go, you're going to hear, and then you will try and put together a formula incorporating what you've heard.
In cooperation with all the party leaders and in cooperation with the government and everybody.
Today there are voices in Jammu and in the valley calling for a division between Jammu and Kashmir. Some others are calling for trifurcation of the state. Could that be a solution, or is that ruled out completely?
Well, these are very big issues, and it is not proper for a minister to express his views on an issue like this. I would leave it to the entire government as such to decide rather than saying anything on this point.
So there is no official government position on these issues?
We have a position, but if we say yes, if we say no, it has repercussions.
So it's an
which
open
at
position.
This point of time, we should avoid such things.
Right. So it's an open position. You're neither saying yes nor are you saying no. You're waiting to see how things develop.
As a matter of fact, there are people who are saying that Jammu, Kashmir, Ladakh should not be divided into regions. It should be one. There are people who are saying that no, it is necessary to do it. Now, what the government should do? Government is continuing with what is available now.
And the government is listening, and the government will then form an opinion later on.
And we are living in a democracy, and if some people have expressed their views, we can't say that don't express. And if majority of the people are expressing their views differently, we can't say that even if you are in big numbers, we are not going to consider.
Meanwhile, the BJP has announced that they will be launching a nationwide general strike on the 11th. Does it worry you that this could exacerbate the situation both in Jammu and the valley?
And I would say that I would appeal to any political party or a section of the society and request them to refrain from doing anything which will encourage the divisive forces or forces of misunderstanding between different sections of society. But in political situation, if they have taken a decision, we leave it to them, we leave it to their judgment, we leave it to their assessment, and we think that all political parties and leaders in the country understand the implications of each and every step they take.
Are you worried that things in Jammu and Kashmir might get worse before they start getting better?
I am not worried about anything. I have to be careful about everything, and I don't have to lose heart. But I have full faith in the capacity of the people capacity of the political parties and capacity of the government to understand the things involved in these things and their capacity to tackle the issue.
Let's take a break at that point, Home Minister. Afterwards, I want to come back and talk to you about the terror situation India confronts. That's in a moment's time. See you after the break. Welcome back to Devil's Advocate and an interview with the Home Minister of India, Shivraj Patil. Home Minister, the tribunal looking into the SIMI matter has rebuffed the government initially by revoking your ban on SIMI. Many people see this as not just embarrassing, but as a slap in the face of the government. How do you comment on this?
Now, if you think that the evidence has to be given in the complaint itself or in a petition itself or in a plaint itself, it cannot be done. Evidence is separately produced.
Are you, forgive me interrupting you, but are you suggesting that the judge heading the tribunal slightly misunderstood and didn't look for the evidence?
I should not be criticizing the judge, and that is why this is not a forum where I can criticize the judge. I'm trying to explain that in the folder, the evidence is given. Whether that evidence is enough or not, or more evidence could have been given, that is a matter which can be judged by the judge. Now, if this matter was decided by one court, we in India have the appellate jurisdiction.
Quite right. You went to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court found in your favor. But the point is this, that the newspapers are reporting that the reason why the judge revoked your ban at the tribunal level is because your officials were deemed to be unprepared. She said that they had given documents that were 2 years old. She was suggesting that the Home Ministry had handled this issue without competence.
Well, I cannot sit in judgment on the judgment delivered by a judge. It would be wrong for me to do.
But are you embarrassed by the judgment?
I would say that I will wait before I form any opinion about this until the judgment is given by the Supreme Court finally.
But in the meantime, there's an intervening stage where you were embarrassed.
Intervening, that is exactly where we should use our discretion to be restrained.
You're asking the press, you're asking the people of the country to wait till the final judgment, but people are saying just this. Are you embarrassed as Home Minister that your ministry and its officials should be written about in the paper in this way?
So many people take pleasure in embarrassing us and saying things against us. And sometimes as human beings, we feel hurt also. But we can't function by feeling hurt or getting embarrassed. We shall have to do our duty. Our duty was to go against that judgment. Instead of criticizing the judge or the court which decided this thing, we have gone to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court did not take any time to give an order.
Let's then broaden the subject. Many people in India are concerned about what they see as the vulnerability of the country to terrorism. Let me ask you a simple question. Do you view terrorism as a law and order issue essentially handled at the state government level, or do you see it as an attack on the defense of India and the integrity of the country, and therefore a subject to be tackled by the centre?
The defense of India is the responsibility of the government of India, assisted by the state governments. Maintaining law and order is the responsibility of the state government.
And where does terrorism fall? Defense of India or law and order?
I'm coming to that. And maintaining law and order, whether it is a terrorist activity, militancy or extremism, is the responsibility of the state government assisted by union government.
So you're saying terrorism therefore is part of law and order and therefore primarily the responsibility of the state government?
Yes, I'm saying that.
Then let me put this to you, because it's a point made by the BJP many times. They say that if the government believes that terrorism is primarily a state government issue, then why is the central government preventing the president giving her assent to 5 separate legislations passed by state governments to tackle terrorism? They say it's contradictory.
When TADA was on the statute book, it was opposed by those who were responsible for enacting POTA. Why did they do it? And when we asked, why are you doing it? They said, if TADA gives you a right to jail the persons for number of years, more time than for which the person jailed can get the punishment and can be put behind the bars. Now, that is why we are running. Now the same principle we should apply to this.
I accept the point you're making, that the people who are criticizing you today are being hypocritical because they adopted a different position when Tata was on the statute.
That's right.
But because they are being hypocritical doesn't mean that today there is no need for tougher legislation.
Now, that is why the point when we repeal POTA, please understand that we did not repeal POTA stock law, totally. We repealed POTA and then we transferred the provisions in POTA to Unlawful Activities Act, which would help the police machinery in the country to take action against the extremists and the terrorists.
There's no doubt that you transferred many of POTA's clauses to the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, except there were two important provisions which never got transferred. The first was the provision that makes for tougher bail. The second was the provision that permits the inclusion in courts of certain types of confession as evidence. Both of those were left out. Today, police chiefs say they are necessary for the fight against terror.
That is exactly what has to be understood. Under the Evidence Act, under the Criminal Procedure Code, and under the existing laws and Unlawful Activities Act, a non-bailable case is decided by a court. The court can say that I give you the bail, I don't give you bail.
Let me put it like this. What you're suggesting is that the laws as they exist today on the statute books are sufficient for the fight against terror. You don't need tougher laws. That's the position you're taking.
My position is this. In my opinion, the existing laws should be used properly. In my opinion, they can certainly help the police and the investigating authority to control them. But if, supposing the law says that he can be jailed for 60 days, and if they want the 90 days, or if they want 120 days or 150 days, that can be done.
So there is a certain toughening up of laws you are committed to do.
I have not completed. But supposing you say that any number of days he should be there, that means if he can be punished for 1 year, he can be put behind the bar for 3 years without giving him the bail, I am not going to accept it.
You are indicating that you are willing to consider a certain toughening, but not a blanket toughening.
No.
Okay, let me put this to you. You've explained to me, and you think you've given a satisfactory explanation why the central government is preventing the president giving assent to 5 pieces of legislation that are on the books by states like UP, Andhra, Rajasthan, Gujarat. The contrary position is this, that the state of Maharashtra, admittedly before you came to power, has passed identical legislation. So the net result is today in India, in Maharashtra and Gujarat, to take those examples, you have different laws with different criteria and different standards for tackling terrorism. Surely, today when terrorism is a major problem, that's indefensible.
That is exactly why there is the provision of 3 lists in our constitution. The legislative powers are given to the state legislature. They can make any law. But if it is in the concurrent list, whether a draconian provision should be accepted, having repealed POTA, having gone to the people on this issue specifically, if we are doing it, and when the parliament says that such a law should not be on the statute book, if you ask the executive to say that no, parliament might have decided you don't do it, that's not correct.
There's a small problem in your answer. You began by talking about the 3 lists in the constitution.
Yes.
Law and order is given to the states. 5 state governments have passed legislation which they believe is essential for the fight against terror, yet you're stopping it. So you're contradicting the principle you began by announcing.
No, existing laws should be on the statute book or should be repealed, will be decided by the executive of the state and the state legislature. But if the new laws are coming which are contrary to the decision taken by the people at large through the elections, contrary to the decision taken by the parliament in repealing POTA,
that you won't permit.
You will ask me, if the parliament decides this thing, can the executive say yes to it?
My last question, many people hearing you will say, this is an excuse to cover up the fact, let me finish. This is an excuse to cover up the fact that this government is weak on terror.
If you look at the statistics relating to the incidents, the casualties and the injured persons and the property damage in last 4 years' time and 4 years' time before that, if the statistic is favorable for this government, you can't say that we are soft on terror.
All right.
And even if we are soft on terror, and if that method is helping, we should adopt it and continue with it.
All right. I should point out to you, Home Minister, people will disagree, but thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you.